Yes, so welcome. Welcome to another episode of Sanctified and Stilettos, where saved and sexy intersect and we delve into faith, femininity, and fearless conversations. I am so excited today because, of course, I have a great guest. But before I get to that, I guess I need to tell you all who I am if you haven't watched a previous episode. But I'm your host, Dr. Heather E. Burton. And today we are stepping into a conversation that often we don't like to talk about. Because one, we're very private when it comes to our money and our finances. So how often do we share, what's in my grandmama's words, what's in our pocketbook? What's in your pocketbook? And so we don't like to talk about that. But today we've got an expert with us to talk about wealth, to talk about the church, and to have this conversation specifically for those who are listening. And we're not going to label this or make it for one audience today, but this is for anyone who wants to improve their financial space and really understand what wealth is. And so without further ado, I am going to introduce you all to Danielle Sydnor. And I am so glad, y'all, she just moved back to Cleveland too. So Danielle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Me too. Y'all see her lipstick is popping, that red lipstick. And I got to do this. We have got to get a shot of the shoes. Danielle came representing
today.
Yes.
I was ready with my stilettos.
Yes, and her stilettos are beautiful. They are gorgeous.
Too. And they're comfortable.
I'm
at this stage of life where it can't just be cute.
Yeah, it has to be comfortable. Yes, I told somebody the other day, like, it's one thing to be in a cute shoe. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to be in a cute, comfortable shoe.
Right, because you're happy.
Yes.
That cute shoe, you might be sitting there like, when is this going to be over?
Yes, is this ending soon? You know what? I just need to find a seat. I'm going to sit down because we know there are some shoes that are just sitting shoes. Mm-hmm. They're not made for being at the club. They're not made for being at church a long time. I tease all the time because even at church, how much I have to walk around. Yes. And then you like, wait, standing. I thought I could get away with these today, but now you got me running all over the church. Mm-hmm. People at the club with their stilettos.
Right.
You finding a seat. You're not standing. Mm-hmm. But Danielle, so tell us a little bit about Danielle Sydnor. Now, I know some things, but share with the listening audience, who is Danielle Sydnor?
So Danielle Sydnor is a mom. I have 2 adult sons. I am a business professional. I spent all of really my professional career in some form or capacity in financial services and or small business lending, coaching, and development. I am a believer. I'm the daughter of a Baptist minister. He wasn't a pastor, he was a minister. I'm a native of Sacramento, California, but really I say I'm from Cleveland. I've been in Cleveland since 1995. But, I like that sunshine still from Cali, and I got a lot of family there. But I'm a lover of people, and I believe in social justice, and I believe that we shouldn't gatekeep information. And that it's important for us to share the knowledge and resources that we have. And so today I'm serving as the president and executive director of the President's Council Foundation, which is designed to provide and be the engine for Black business growth in Northeast Ohio.
And I've had an opportunity to work with President's Council, doing great work, specifically when we talk about the city of Cleveland doing great work. But you mentioned something. You mentioned you are a person who is not a gatekeeper. You want to provide the information. Why do you think, specifically when we talk about within the Black community, why do we like to hold information and won't share it to others?
Yeah, I think that comes from, and if some people feel like everything ain't about slavery, but it is.
Yeah.
It is. We just have to understand that. At the root of that is a scarcity mentality. Mm-hmm. We were conditioned to believe that we were in competition with each other. We were conditioned to believe that if you get some, that means I'm getting less.
Right.
And so that is perpetuated generation after generation. I think that we have periods of time in our evolution where we have done a great job of collaborating and working together. You think about places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, or even in Cleveland, Ohio, you had stretches of the city of Cleveland that were totally Black owned. All of the restaurants and hotels and juke joints and all the things. And so we've collaborated before, but I do think that underlying core issue is this belief that there's just not enough for all of us to have what we want.
Yeah, there's that belief that there is a win-lose, that everyone can't win because there's not enough resources.
Yeah.
And we know that that's not a true thing, that there are resources that are available. How do we counter that mentality? Specifically, how, and I know talk about that. How are we going to counter that mentality?
I think that because we talked about the I think undergirding of this conversation is that Sanctified and Stilettos. And so if you think about it from a place of abundance, the church teaches that there is no lack, right? We might go through periods of lack. You might have a season when you don't have all that you need. But if we believe God to be who he says he is, then we should be confident that the resources that we not only want, but the resources that we need are available and there for us. And so I think it really does boil down to mentality and getting ourselves to the place where when we have moments where things are not working the way that we want them to, we don't get stuck in that moment and believe that this is our destiny. I believe that Jeremiah 29:11 is true, is that I believe that he has an expected end and he desires for me to prosper and not to be in a situation of lack. Because that's a weak testimony. It's a weak testimony as a believer. If you always struggling, but come join me in this struggle. It's
right. Like, I don't want to join you in the struggle. I ain't trying to live no rough life.
It's already hard.
Right. It's hard. And I think people use that passage very often, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper and not to cause you harm. But people use it, but they really don't think about what that really looks like, especially when we talk about wealth. And I think within the church, very often what tends to happen is we get this mindset and we get this fear of prosperity for so many reasons that people run from, and making prosperity just about wealth. And so then we get fearful of wealth. I even think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I said, I don't know this. If you saw the viral reel that's going around from Drewski, he did this whole thing about the mega church, right? But I think that is unfortunately what we have become to think about what prosperity looks like in the church is, do I have a Bentley, then that means I am prosperous, versus being in a position where I am taken care of and my family is taken care of, and I do have a legacy to leave, and that may mean that no one in my family has ever passed down $100,000 to the next generation, and I'm going to be the person to do that. And so instead of it always being the glamorous red bottom Bentley as prosperity, how do we start to reframe that and talk about the things that are meaningful and that have value and that are assets that pass on from generation to generation? Because those things are depreciating assets. They lose value.
Exactly. And they lose value quickly. I think about buying a new car and you drive it off the lot and it's depreciating right as you drive it off immediately. But what I also think about, and my mind is going to so many different places, specifically when we talk about the church, but the fact too of how we lose sight of wealth and what that means for us as individuals, as a family, as community, because we also have this, humble mentality. Yeah. Is that we're supposed to be modest, we're supposed to be humble, we're supposed to have humility. And so sometimes that gets construed that people think, well, if I'm humble, then I'm not, I can't have this dollar amount, right, or I can't purchase this, or I can't wear that. Wait. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how someone else might kind of slice and dice it up. But for me, humility just means that I'm not glorifying the thing, right? I don't believe that there's anything wrong with us having excess, depending upon how we use it, right? You get to the place where you see some people that have tremendous amounts of wealth, and it's very flaunted, and it's like, y'all wish y'all had this, look at what I have, versus those that have tremendous amounts of wealth and they're seeking to do good with it. I mean, we are in a system of capitalism in the United States of America, right? So we could get into an ideological conversation about whether or not this is the best political economics, kind of system to have, but it is what we have, right? And what I believe is that we have an obligation to use the tools and the systems that we are in to do good with them. And so if I have resources, I can direct and control where those resources go. And so if I'm always on the other side hoping that someone gives me resources, then I'm in a position where instead of being the lender, I'm the borrower, right? And so being able to be humble and have humility, to me, doesn't mean you have lack.
It means that when you do have access, you don't forget your source. You don't forget where you came from. You don't forget where the blessings that you have came from, but you desire to do more good and make more people have access to what you have.
Yeah, I love that because, thinking about that is that we know that the word says we are supposed to be the lender and not the borrower, but we often are the borrower.
Yeah, if you don't have any excess,
Right.
you cannot live from a place of lack.
Yeah.
You have to have more. You have to have extra. If you are lending somebody something, at least what I have always been told, you need to be comfortable with that person never giving it back to you.
Yeah, and that was something I had to learn.
Yeah.
Because I would give based on the fact of the mentality of you're going to pay me back. And I say that from a couple different lenses, because one was forgiving folks who didn't pay me back. So that was a whole nother conversation. But forgiving people who actually borrowed from me who didn't pay me back. So as you said, I had to get to the point of understanding, if you're giving this away, you can afford to give it away with the expectation that you're not going to get it in return.
Absolutely.
Even if people say, let me borrow, I'm going to pay you back.
Be prepared, right? You should have the expectation, the conversation that this is not a gift, this is a loan. But know that if they don't pay you back, are you going to miss your mortgage?
Yeah.
Are you going to miss putting food on your own table? Nope. And so if you're in a position of just having enough or lack, you cannot be a lender. And so I think about those kinds of sayings and scriptures as reminders for us that the excess in and of itself is not the issue. It is how we treat it. Do we idolize it? Does it become our main focus? Are we running after it so much that we're losing sight of all the other things that we should be doing?
Yeah. And what does it look like to run after money?
Yeah. So I have this saying that either you will control your money or your money will control you. Right. And which means that if you don't get some sort of discipline amount around money, you will forever be chasing more of it because you don't have enough. So I got a little bit, I blew it, and now I got to go get some more. And so instead of being able to live peacefully and say, I have some excess, I don't have to have a brand new car every 4 years, I don't have to have the latest iPhone every time it comes out, I'm not going to overextend myself by having a tremendous amount of debt, because what happens is you get to the point where even if you don't want to make that decision to have a full-time job and 2 side hustles, if you got all of these expenses, your money is now controlling you and telling you what to do. You got to be out doing a whole lot more than you desire. And so I think that's what it looks like to constantly be chasing after it. It's one thing to know that God has given you tremendous skills and abilities, and so you can continue to do things that allow you to bring in more resources. But when you get to the place where life is out of balance, you don't have any more social life, you don't have relationship with your family anymore because all you're doing is working and trying to produce more revenue and more income, I would say you're probably out of balance and you need to reevaluate.
Yeah, and I'm actually sitting here thinking, and it's interesting because my thoughts around the fact of me now being in a certain space, a certain situation, and I've shared this in posts and that sort of things. I don't think I've shared it on an episode of Sanctified and Stilettos, but having been one of the Black women who lost her job based on DEI and executive orders with the other 390,000 Black women, is that I'm at a place now where it's like, okay, your severance is running out, your vacation's running out, the savings that you had is running out. And so I began to think about, this shifting and where I am. And last night, and it's so interesting that you came today, because last night I was like, Lord, I got 7 jobs.
Yeah.
Like I started calculating, like, Lord, I got 7 jobs trying to make the income to support the lifestyle that I had. And not that I was living above my means. I love living above my means, not at all. But when you face unemployment and that shift, and then here's the thing, I did what they told me to do, Danielle. I had several months of savings put aside, but who knew that I would be unemployed for 8 months?
Yeah.
No,
it's hard, and I think that the thing that we have to do is, I always say, give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I know that there are financial gurus out there that they speak in absolutes, and that's always so frustrating to me, because it makes it seem like, well, I'm a failure because they said I should have done this, and this, and then, I must be the one doing something wrong if it's not working for me. But in reality, the fact that you had some savings puts you in a much better place than most people when they're
Yeah.
facing a situation of unemployment.
And
right?
that's what I was thinking. And that goes back to what we talk about when we're talking about just being in relationship with God and being in relationship with Christ and understanding and listening to the voice, is that I knew 2 years ago that there was going to be a shift, and there was going to be a shift in my employment because I started getting discontent with work. And so there was a sermon about saving or about tithing and why do we tithe, and reevaluating why you tithe, because I've been a tither since I was 8 years old. And so, I'm used habit, transparent habit.
Yeah.
I tithe, you give. That's what I've been doing since 8. So of course I'm gonna give like that. But I started putting more money to the side and started praying, God, this is your money. It's not my money. This is yours. So let me be a good steward of your money. And so that was the mentality. So I started saving more. And so it helped me in this transition. But I also think, what advice for someone like me and even others who may be listening, the advice of how do we move forward from here? How do we rebuild, reestablish, recreate?
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about wealth.
Yeah. I mean, I think the short answer is it's usually not easy and it requires some level of sacrifice. So some things that we're used to doing that we feel like I should not have to give that thing up, we might have to for a season. And I say that for a season.
Yeah, I had to give up my massage every month.
Yeah. And those things add up, right?
It does.
I mean, so two
And that's
things
the
that
reality.
I think about.
Yeah.
One is I used to tell my oldest son, he would always ask me for like a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. And I said, you will nickel and dime yourself to $100 very quickly. You're like, oh, that's only $5. That's only $2. Like you look up and you spend $100. That's one. Is when you have moments and seasons in life where you have to think about where you cut back, look at those things that you would least suspect are places that I would say money is kind of draining out the door without realizing it. Subscriptions are a big one. Yeah. It's really easy to get on auto pay. Today. Oh my gosh. Yeah. All kinds of things. Oh, I'm doing temporary trial. Like 5 temporary trials later, you're spending an extra $200 a month. Yeah. And if you're in a period of like needing to tighten the belt, that's gas money, that's food, that's all kinds of things. Right. The other thing that I say is really start to think about ways that you can use your human capital, your knowledge, your intellectual property to be able to provide resources to people that are trying to get to where you are. And so sometimes we think like, oh, I can't charge somebody for that. Like, absolutely you can.
Well, that's how I'm ending up with 7 jobs right now.
Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it under the umbrella maybe of consulting, is it 7 jobs or is it 7 projects?
No, literally, I started thinking about the fact, so let's see, and but just thinking about this, I was like, you a podcaster, you hosting a radio show, we'll put them in the same category. Yeah. You consulting now, you created your own coaching that you're doing, plus ministry, author. I was like, well, I mean, they're all under the umbrella of Heather E. Burton. It's all the same brand, but it's like, okay, I need some continuity.
For sure.
Something that, because I don't want to be that person, like you said, chasing the money, or say the statement again so I can get it right.
Yeah, so you will control your money or your money controls you. Yes,
I don't want my money controlling me. I want to control my money. And so it was just that thought, and it's funny that I had these thoughts yesterday, and then we're having this conversation today.
But I would one thing I would also encourage you to think about is how you piggyback things together. So if you are doing coaching, is the authorship as a part of it. Is like everybody who I coach gets my book, buys a book, does something. Or if I'm doing some other consulting, is that sort of wrapped into it to where the streams of income start to feed off of each other?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So that's a great idea. Let's talk about wealth.
Yeah.
What is wealth?
Wealth, I mean, I think the
and I ask that because of rich is we always hear people, you always hear, and I, especially when I talk to young people are like, I want to be rich. Yeah. And so understanding the difference and explaining that.
Yeah. I had a guy in business tell me, like, if you can write a check for $50 million, you're wealthy. And I was like, oof. Right? Like, rich is like, yeah, you can write a check for $1 million. It's like, wealthy is when it's not going to change your standard of living at all, and you can write a check in the multiples of millions of dollars space. And so I think about it as people and a person that has assets that are continuing to grow in value without them having to do a whole lot for that. That's really wealth, because your assets should be making more money for them off of themselves. Rich is even sometimes you're still doing the things. So maybe you're getting up every day, you're going to work, you are the athlete or the entertainer where you're actually putting effort forward in order to maintain that standard of living. But when you start to get wealth, it's like we own this vineyard, and this vineyard is just continuing to produce, and I don't have to do anything, but the check still comes to the house.
So it's like passive income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think passive income times 10, though, right?
10,
it's like,
yeah,
because we hear passive income and it's like, are you going to go sell ACN?
Yeah, but this
no.
is like, nope, I want to get me a vineyard and you buying all the wine and I'm doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's a whole team of people that work the vineyard and I collect the resources, right? And like that, to me, is the thought of passive. That's real estate. There's all different types of avenues where people create passive income, and even like intellectual property. You write a book like one time and then allow it to do its thing, and somebody else is telling everybody else to go buy the book. And so you don't have to use that time and energy you spend one time continues to create more income or revenue from it.
Yeah, so I hope our audience is listening to this to understand some of the ways that you can think about how to generate wealth, because we often think about, as you said, that it just takes work, that it takes the grinding, that you have to just grind and grind and grind in order to get wealth. But there are ways that you can actually build wealth where the grind is not a killer.
Right.
It doesn't kill you.
Yeah, I think ultimately the goal in building wealth is like you have to grind at some point. So I don't ever want to send out the signal that it's like, it's just soft life, and that's how you build wealth.
Yeah.
There is some grind, and even that things that appear soft life, there's a lot of production elements
behind
that's what
I meant that, except I was getting less about killing you.
Yes.
Of killing your spirit,
your
soul,
I just hear people be looking, there's that confirmation bias that we look for somebody to confirm the thing we're looking for.
No, you don't have to work. You don't have to grind. No, I don't want y'all to think
you can write one book and be wealthy. Like, no.
It doesn't work that way.
Because the years of learning that you have that puts you in the position to write a book,
yes,
that's a grind.
Yes, it didn't come overnight.
No.
With any of my books. No, I didn't sit down. And that's another thing. Speaking of that, is technology makes people think that things are so easy and that they happen overnight. And I don't know if you and I had this conversation before about success, and folks thinking that even overnight success took work to get to the overnight success.
Right.
That it just didn't happen overnight.
We find out about overnight successes overnight, but they have been working and grinding and doing things for I think about like Kev on stage as an example of somebody who talks all the time about like, no, I've been doing this. It's like people just found out. And that's usually the story.
Yeah, you're just seeing me.
Yeah.
You're just seeing me. How do we change the narrative, specifically when we're talking about the church and the narrative with money? And in my mind, Pop Drewski again from and if you all have not seen that, you need to see this. And it's a comedy take, a parody on the church, but there are people who believe this is the way that the majority of churches behave. And I think that's the indictment against the church, is that there are folks that actually believe
all churches are like that.
Yeah, that all churches are like this. And so how do we change that narrative about money and a love relationship with money? Because I remember reading a book that talked about the way that you treat money very often is how you grew up around money and your relationship with money.
Yeah. So my earliest training as a financial advisor, we were taught behavioral economics and really helping people to learn about how they do view their relationship with money. And so, again, if you think about many of us coming from family backgrounds where maybe we're only one or two generations removed from severe lack. Most Black people in this country have a history of lack. And there are some of our family members who are fortunate where you maybe have a couple generations of folks who went to college and did things. But for a majority of Black Americans, that's not the case. So money was always a survival tactic. It wasn't oftentimes things that provided a lot of leisure. It was, do I have enough to get by? And so again, that gets ingrained where I'm always chasing after this thing because I want to be able to get out of that just having enough kind of mentality. And then you couple that with the belief system in the church and our kind of teaching and the biblical attitude around giving and tithing. And unfortunately, you have places where people have taken advantage of that, right? And it has become such the focus instead of all the rest of the things that we are also commanded to do, right? Like love.
Yes.
we forget about that. Just make sure you tithe.
Right. Just
you ain't got to do nothing
give.
else. Just make sure you give,
Right.
right? And so I think it's the way we change the narrative is platforms like this, where our focus is helping people learn how to enrich themselves, not just for themselves, but to be able to give. I mean, Black people are some of the most philanthropic people.
Right.
We taking care of Big Mama. We taking care of our nieces and nephews, our kids, our family, plus giving in the church. And so we might not do it through nonprofit foundations and through some other forms, but we've always been philanthropic. And so I think it's incumbent upon the church to also recognize that many people in the congregation are giving from a challenging place. And I think that Dr. Jamal Bryant did something in his church, was like, you know, we had it's layoffs and other stuff that's happening. Like, I'm not asking for nothing. That's unheard of.
Yeah, it is. Because most churches, that's the focus on Sunday, is that they need the money in order to be able to operate.
And they're a business.
Right, and no fault to the church. You have to have finances in order to operate.
Yeah.
But like,
and you should be doing something that people can see.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's, to me, anybody that's in a church where they feel like the focus is off, you have a choice to stay or to go. Right. I don't think that pastors should be walking around in shoes with holes in them and jeans that's tattered or whatever. They should be able to take care of themselves and their family and be able to retire and not have to work until they 90 years old.
Yep.
I believe that we should take care of the men and women of God. I believe that God's house should look a certain way.
Definitely.
Right. But if you are in a building where those things are not happening, and then you should question that.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens very often with people. And, you know, I see it more so where Black men get turned off from the church because of that element right there when we talk about finances and we talk about money.
Yeah.
And being at churches where the pastor is looking a certain way, but things aren't happening in the community. Things aren't being done. And so I agree with you, is that if you are doing within your church, as members, we have a right to either stay or leave. You don't have to stay if and I always say, and if it's not Bible.
Right.
Like if you're not in a Bible teaching, Bible basis, following principles, because nowhere their story, you know, there is about giving your last, the widow that gave hers, but there isn't anything that says you should be destitute.
Yeah, that's not a commandment, right?
Yeah. And so working through that. Now you have an interesting story though, Danielle, that especially when we talk about building wealth and understanding finances, that you went through after your divorce.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk about that, because I think it's important for people, especially women, to hear, because very often, you know, we get embarrassed about our situations, and especially when we have to cut back or when we have to shift or we have to change things in order to help us move forward or grow.
Yeah, getting divorced was probably one of the most freeing things that ever happened for me, because I did grow up in a very traditional household. My parents got divorced when I was my first freshman year going to college. But I was, you know, my ex-husband was a minister as well, and it was just like, you're supposed to do the right thing and you figure it out or whatever. But what I recognized is I was also trying to be what everybody thought I should be. And so when I got divorced, I moved back in with my mom, with my two children, and we shared a bedroom together, a trundle bed. They slept on the top, and I slept on a little pull-out part. And I did that because I needed to sacrifice if I wanted to be in a position to be able to buy a home and do things. And so I stayed with my mom, and she ended up moving to Atlanta, and I stayed renting that place from the homeowner that we were renting from. And then I bought a home. So that was like 2007. By 2009, I purchased my first home that I still own today, that I have a tenant in. And so I went through credit being messed up, all of those things. But for me, it was really about knowing that fortunately, I did have a mom that I could move in with,
Yeah.
and I thank God for that, because so many people in our community don't have
that.
family as a safety net. If I didn't have that, my story would be very different today. That afforded me the chance to go back to school, because I was in college when I married my ex-husband, but I went to work full time, and so I was working and going to school. And really put me on the path. Now I was able to finish my degree. I became a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch. And so it took me on a different path, trajectory-wise, of what I've done in my career as a result of that.
Do you think people should feel guilty about having money?
No. I think you should feel guilty about having money if you know you've done something wrong to acquire it. That's it.
That's powerful.
Yeah, like, if you cause harm to people on the path towards getting what you have, then shame on you.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with doing well while you're doing good.
And I ask that question because there are some times within spaces where folks are made to feel guilty for what they have. And the language that people like to use is, well, you don't have any children. Well, you're not married. Well, you've got a good job. So why can't you financially take care of this? Yeah. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? And
teach a man how to fish.
Yes.
That's what I believe, right? Like, that's why I said, if you think about sometimes when people are trying to figure out how to fill the gap for themselves financially, there's probably something that that somebody else doesn't know as well, that if they learned a skill or a trade or a thing, they could go enrich themselves some more. And so what do you do to try and use the knowledge and information you have to help put some resources in your pocket, but also to help somebody at the same time? And no, I don't think there's anything wrong with us having. Again, I think it's a commandment that we have. We can't give if we don't have.
Yeah. And I like that lens that we often don't think about is, you can't do for others and you can't give if you don't have.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to have. How did you get into this line of work?
Yeah.
Wealth, financial planning, because I'm going to say this. When I think of financial planners very often, I think of nerds. I don't think of Danielle. Like, I ain't thinking of nobody this fly to be balancing my checkbook and balancing my money. It's a different mentality. And there are other people out there that I would say the same thing, that I'm like, look at me and be like, the look is deceiving.
Yeah. I know my younger sister is a scientist, and I'm like, number one, I don't think that I ever met someone who was a scientist outside of like a science teacher, but she's a microbiologist, and I'm like, you would not look at her and be like, she's a microbiologist. Right. But how I got into it is I've always been intrigued with money. My parents were entrepreneurs. And my dad allowed us to, I shouldn't say allowed, he made us, but he had let me run our front counter one summer. I hadn't been no more than like 9 or 10 years old. And so I started to become more intrigued with like operating businesses and money, and knowing that I could get up, I could come down. My sisters didn't want to do it. I was going to get up and ride the bus down and be at the print shop and do the work, and I was going to get the reward for it. And then I watched A Pursuit of Happiness, the movie with Will Smith. Yeah, about the financial advisor who, just Chris Gardner was a big story. After watching that movie, I was like, I want to be a financial advisor. And Merrill Lynch had got acquired by Bank of America. I was working at Bank of America at the time because I started at MBNA, and MBNA had got acquired by Bank of America. And so I pursued that path. And really it was like, I wanted to help more people that look like me learn about these concepts that everybody else was making feel so complicated. My parents never had 401k accounts.
Right.
They were entrepreneurs. They didn't have savings. They didn't have credit. They paid everything with cash because they had a cash-based business. And so some of these things that I learned in adulthood, I wanted other people to learn earlier and to know and to take advantage of it. And also to recognize that if they didn't have somebody that they felt comfortable laying bare their insecurities, they were likely never going to do some of the things that could actually benefit them. And so that's what got me into the business.
It's interesting. And I said that because I think about that you don't find many people who really say, let me really dig into this. And I have another friend that is really like just everything financial, just finding all the information that they can that's going to help benefit. What are some of the things that we should do that we should do specifically as Black women, as we think about, and not even just Black women, because there are other people that listen to the podcast, but what should we do in order to begin to think seriously about building wealth and leaving generational wealth?
Yeah. So number one, I say try and maximize your earnings as much as possible. And what that means is when you're going into negotiations. I was just about to say, Danielle,
you got to tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, when you're going into negotiations, assume that there's more to available to you than somebody's offering you immediately. So if you're negotiating a contract, if you're a consultant, if you're negotiating a promotion, if you're negotiating for a new job, just get used to negotiating. It's not something that a lot of times women do. Naturally, we kind of think like, you're just going to be fair and honest with me. And if this price is the price, then that's what it is.
We know that's not the case, especially when we talk about that gender discrepancy.
Yes.
That women will not negotiate, whereas men, they
be less qualified than the job description says, and they want more money.
They will have 2 out of 10 qualifications. We will have 10 out of 10. And still won't apply or negotiate the way that they will.
Yeah. So try and maximize your earnings, right? So that's important because it sounds really nice to say you're going to pass down wealth and you're going to, build generational wealth, but you have to have something to do that with.
Right.
And that's why I say important to maximize your earnings. Number 2 is really understand different savings and investing vehicles, because there are people who's like, oh, I'm saving money. Well, interest rates vary and they fluctuate. We had a period of time around the pandemic where interest rates to borrow money was at 0. So if I'm borrowing money at 0, that means I'm also lending it at 0, right? Like you're the same sort of, your savings rate is also going to be at 0. Because if I am able to go and buy a car and interest rates are 6% to purchase a car, that means that the bank is also going to give me a higher savings rate. So those two are going to go together. If when you go borrow money, it's really, really cheap, that means you're going to get really, really low returns on your savings. You need to be comfortable investing. And so this is the thing I would tell people. Oftentimes I would have clients that I worked with, they're like, I don't understand stocks and bonds, right? And I said, well, listen, if you believe that the world is coming to an end and that we are going to be living in Armageddon, then I would tell you, you probably shouldn't invest. But if you believe that we are probably going to be here as a normal humanity for a number of several more years, then the majority of companies that you see that are large, that are whatever, they're going to be here in some form or fashion. They might get gobbled up. I said I started at MBNA. Then I worked at Bank of America, worked at Merrill Lynch. I never left. I started at MBNA. We got acquired. So if you were an investor in Bank of America and then they bought Merrill Lynch, you still see the value of that acquisition. So you have to find some large companies, you find other tools that allow you to get more comfortable with investing, and think about it like you would find a sale at Christian Louboutin. If those shoes were 90% off, you wouldn't be like, oh, there must be something wrong. You give me 10 pair.
Yes.
But for some reason, when the stock market goes on sale, everybody's like, this is going down. I don't want that. Like, no. Unless you think we're headed to Armageddon, which we're not, you're buying it on sale. And so we have to get comfortable starting to learn the terminology of investing. And so even if you don't have a plan to go be a financial advisor yourself, start to learn the terminology. You'll get more comfortable with actually making the decisions when you sit down with a financial professional and talk to an expert. It is okay.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice right there, is to talk to an expert, because that's what I did early on. And I remember I had a car accident. I was in a car accident. Someone rear-ended me, and instead of me taking the money and spending the money, I invested the money. And that was my first big investment. I was like, I'm going to invest this. I'm not going to spend it. I'm not going to wait, because that's what we do. We get a check and then we go spend it on
you could
stuff
do $2,000, $1,000, $5,000. The only reason I jumped in there is because
no, go ahead.
I had so many people that thought, well, if I don't have $200,000, I can't invest. You can't invest $200,000 if you don't have. If you don't have it,
but you can
invest
$1,000.
Yeah. And you should not expect a $200,000 type of return. So make sure those things are balanced. But if you go put $1,000 into a Roth IRA today, and you allow that thing to compound over time, and you continue to add to it, you will be in a much better position than if you didn't.
Right. And I think, and it's learning that, and I really say that, especially for our younger generations, is paying attention to the advice that people give you when it comes to finances.
Mm-hmm.
We often we don't, and it puts us behind versus putting us ahead.
I think it's because we always believe we have more time, you know. And,
Yeah.
and as I'm now at 43, it's amazing how quickly you go from like when I was 20 to like, oh my, I'm 43 now.
Yeah.
Like life has changed
It
real
changed.
quick. And you
And
start
I
to
always tell
look.
people, once you turn 40, it go faster and faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, and you don't want to be on the grind forever.
No.
You want to be in a place where you have controlled your money, which now means you can retire.
Yeah.
And you can work less, and you can be on vacation, and you can consult when you feel like it, as opposed to, I have to do this if I'm going to eat. I have to do this if I'm going to have a roof over my head.
Right. And I think when we, especially doing that and then going back to thinking about just the church, and the church that often puts this perspective of what you should have, what you shouldn't have, how you should operate. And we've got to get beyond that. We've got to get beyond the traditional labels of who we should be. I remember growing up in the scripture or hearing people say that the love of money.
Yeah.
No, let me rephrase it. People saying money was the root of all evil. But when I began to study, scripture says the love of money, which is completely different than saying money. But if you're living in a space where you think money is evil, then
you believe that I'm not supposed to have, because the Bible say money is the root of all evil. And we know that those kinds of tricks were perpetuated towards people in our community for generations, right? It's like, I can teach you why you're supposed to not have, because the Bible says you're not supposed to have no money anyway. So when you don't have it, it's like, well, God honors the meek, and God honors the humble, and God honors the widow, and God honors, it's like, and also he told you to be the lender, not the borrower. So how those things add up.
And that's the thing. And I think that's why it's so important too, which is not this lesson today, but this is why you have to know what's in the word. Versus what somebody said, what pastor said. We can't keep going on what pastor said, because pastor may not be giving you the right information.
Right.
Danielle, I am so excited that you were able to join us today. And actually, I'm going to have to bring you back, because I really want to talk about, in a later show, about business ownership. And especially business ownership when it comes to Black women in the community, and what that looks like, and the advice that you can give, how we can have these conversations. Because one of the things that, I pay attention to, and I've said this from having been in higher education for almost 20 years, is being enslaved to the institutions.
Yeah, so I didn't even get into it.
And that's why I said we're going to have to save it for another show, because we don't have much time left. But I want to get into that, of being enslaved to the institutions. And then you give all of this. You give over 100% of yourself. And
it's really a fear-based thing.
Yeah.
We're afraid. We are afraid to break away from these things. And if you are going to build wealth, you have to own something.
Yeah.
You own real estate. You own interest in a business. You own, and I would even say stocks and bonds really usually put you in the place of being wealthy, unless you're like an investor in Uber before it was its IPO or whatever. Most of the times you can get rich from investing in stocks and bonds. You're not going to get wealthy. But you start to own businesses, you own real estate, things like that. And so many times I see so many Black women who are running other people's things.
Yeah, and running them good.
Yeah. And we are starting businesses at higher rates, but our businesses are not generating the same level of revenue. So a lot of times we're starting businesses because we have been put into a certain ceiling inside of these corporate spaces. And so we go start a business to be able to give ourselves some more earning potential. But a lot of times we're not starting companies. And so we're just creating another job for ourselves. And we're not putting ourselves in a position where we can take a vacation, where we've got staff, where we have other executives. And so I just purchased a printing franchise with a business partner of mine in December. I'm really excited about that, because it's getting on the other side. Like, I have my consulting practice, and that's a job. I recognize that. It's like a thing I have to be doing. But this will be a thing where we are hiring people to do. They will be running the thing, and the goal is to eventually sell it. Like, that is the whole point of getting in, is to have an exit at some point.
Yeah. And I hope people are I'm listening. So I'm taking all my nuggets with me, and I'm going to use all of them. And we are at our time, so I don't want to keep you. I don't want to keep you. But this is such a great conversation. That's why I said I'm gonna have to bring you back, because we're gonna have to talk about this. We got to talk about these businesses and what that looks like, and getting people to just understand how to invest so that they can make money, build wealth. I'm going to say build wealth off of business ownership. So Danielle, I don't know if you have any last words that you want to say to the audience about anything.
I think that, number one, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Dr. Heather, and this conversation I think is so timely, because so many times we have gotten the faith part of the word correct. But then we let the works side go, or vice versa.
Right.
We got all works and we got no faith. And we trying to control everything ourselves. Or we got all the faith and we just waiting on God.
And we know what the word says. Faith without works is dead.
Right. And so I think that, to me, when I hear the topic that we're talking about today, is really the embodiment of that. It's us helping ourselves recognize that there is a path to the things that we desire, and there's going to be a faith component of it, and there's going to be a us component of it. And so these kind of platforms help to enrich us and give us the resources that we need to get there.
Yeah, I love it. So you all heard Danielle. There's a faith component and there's a us component. So we're the ones that have to do the work, because faith without works is dead. And if you don't remember anything else, you've got to remember, don't chase the money. Danielle, I'm going to need you to say it one more time for me. I'm trying to close out and I can't even get it right.
Say, you either control your money or your money will control you.
So you either control your money or your money will control you. And I need us to hold on to that, because we don't want our money controlling us. We want to control our money. So we thank you for joining us on another episode of Sanctified and Stilettos. Tune in again, where we will have additional conversations. I'm not sure how soon I'll be bringing Danielle back, but you can best believe she'll be coming back to talk about business ownership and what that looks when we talk about the church, business, wealth, that whole combination. So again, thank you for joining us on an episode of Sanctified and Stilettos. We're saved and sexy intersect, and we delve into faith, femininity, and fearless conversations. Have a great day.